Alright, so we are going to solve some quadratic equations in this video, and we are going to apply the knowledge we've gotten from the previous video or previous videos I posted on quadratic equations. Okay, so we're going to start off with the first one. So the first step, if we can recall, is to find the product of a and c, whereby a is the coefficient of x squared and c is the constant. Okay, so that's just 12. Then move on to find the factors of 12, which I've already listed them here. Then we proceed to find two numbers out of the factors, which first of all, when we add, we are supposed to get -7 over here, and when we multiply, we're supposed to get +12. Okay, so those two numbers out of these factors that will satisfy the particular conditions we are looking for will be -3 and then -4. So -3 times -4 is going to give us +12 as we have it over here. And if you add the two numbers up, so you're also going to get -7. So we've gotten the two numbers which will satisfy the conditions you are looking for. So you just move on to split the -7 into 2 using those two numbers. So that's going to give us that. And you group them, you factorize, proceed to factorize further, and then you equate each expression in the brackets to 0. Then you get your final answer. So for this particular question, our values of x are 3 and then 4. Now, if you're working with an MCQ, right? If you're solving MCQs and then you get a quadratic equation, right? And you are asked to solve. Once you're able to get the two numbers from the factors which satisfy the condition we are looking for, you can just negate the two numbers, right? That's going to give you your answer. So for example, the two numbers we picked from the factors of 12 were -3 and -4. If you negate both numbers, you are going to get 3 and 4, which are the answers we have over here. So once you are sure that the two numbers you are picking, right, are satisfying the condition you are looking for, just negate the two of them. You are going to get your final answer, and this will help you in your MCQs to probably move faster. But for you to be sure that those two numbers are correct, you can proceed and go through the required steps, and then yeah, you'll be able to verify that those two numbers are correct. And after solving any quadratic equation or any equation at all, just put your answers into the original equation to see if it satisfies or if they satisfy the original equation before you conclude that those two are your final answers. Okay, so move on to our second example. So definitely have to find the factors of 20. I have them over here. Two factors of 20, which one we add give us +9, which one we multiply is going to give us +20. Those numbers will be 4 and then 5. Okay, so we split the 9x into 2 using those two numbers. Proceed, and then you end up with our answers. So again, the two factors of 20 we picked were 4 and 5. If we negate the two of them, you are going to get -4 and then -5. It's as simple as that. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. You can pause the video and then try this particular question if you want. Okay, so factors of 15, 1, 3, 5, and 15. Two numbers, which when we add will give us -2. If we multiply, it's going to give us -15. So that will be -5 and 3. So this will be it. And so we move on to the next step where we split the -2 using the two numbers. Then we group them, factorize, equates the expression in the two brackets to 0. Then we get our final answers. Very straightforward. Okay, this is the next example. You can pause and then try. Okay, so usually what we would have done is to multiply the 4 and then the 24, and then that would have probably given us something like 96, right? I would have proceeded to find the factors of 96. Then after finding the factors of 96, we would have probably looked for two numbers, which when we add, it's going to give us negative 20. When we multiply, in this particular instance, it would have probably given us the product of 4 and 24, which is 96, right? But we are not going to do that in this particular question because we can actually simplify this equation to make the work easier for us. So anytime you get a quadratic equation whereby the coefficient of x squared is not 1, try and see if you can simplify the equation by dividing through by a number which can sort of reduce the coefficient of x squared over here, right? So for this particular question, we can actually divide through by 4. Actually, this part is also supposed to be 4 divided by 4. This part is supposed to be divided by 4 as well. But 0 over 4 is actually the same thing as 0, so probably that's why I ignored it at first. So you divide the whole equation by 4 and then simplify further. That's going to give you x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Now you can see this is much more simpler compared to the first equation, right? So from here, the number we'll be dealing with will be 6 because now this side is 1. 1 times 6 is going to give us 6. So factors of 6, 1, 2, 3, and 6. Two factors of 6 which can be added to get negative 5, multiplied to get positive 6. That's clearly negative 2 and negative 3, right? So we have to split the minus 5x using those two numbers, and we group them, we factorize further, then equate both expressions in the bracket to 0, and we are going to arrive at 2 and 3 as the final answers for this particular question. You could have probably also used the same method we've been using earlier on by multiplying 4 and then 24. That would have given you 96, right? So after getting the 96, you proceed to find the factors of 96. But in this case, that's how we would have been. Instead of finding two numbers, which when you add, you get this negative 20. And then when you multiply, you get this positive 24. This would have been different. Okay, in this case, you would have found two factors out of the factors of 96, which when you add, you get the negative 20, but when you multiply, you get this product, which is 4, then 24, which is 96 you got at the start. Okay, I'll illustrate this in the next example, but basically this is how this example can be dealt with. Okay, so this is our next example. um, Again, the coefficient of x squared here is 2, so the first thing that would have probably come to mind is that try to divide through by 2 to see. But here's the case that after dividing through by 2, you can't really simplify this one further, right? So you get a fraction here which kind of makes this whole equation complicated. Okay, so what we will try and do is that we will maintain the original equation, right? And then proceed through the steps that we know since we can't simplify this equation further. Okay, so what we are going to do is to find the product of 2 and 2. So this 2 here and then this 2 here as well. To find a product, that's going to give you 4. So this 4 is our new C, right? If you remember the general equation whereby we have ax squared plus bx squared plus bx, then plus c equals 0. If you remember this particular equation, this c was our constant, right? So what I'm trying to say is that once you multiply these two digits, the result you get, right, is our new C. Now it is positive 4 because the original C we had here was positive, right? Or if you multiply this positive 2 by this positive 2, that you are going to get positive 4. So the new C we'll be dealing with is positive 4. Okay, so that means you proceed to find the factors of 4, which is 1, 2, and 4. Then we look for two factors out of the factors of 4, which when we add to give us positive 5, this positive 5, and which when we multiply is going to give us this new C, which is positive 4, and that's going to be 1 and 4, right? So 1 times 4 gives us positive 4, 1 plus 4 gives us positive 5. So we proceed to split this positive 5 using those two numbers, so that's going to give us this. Okay, then we group them, factorize, then proceed to get our final answers. So the answers for this particular question are -2 and negative half, or negative 0.5. So now you can see that the two numbers we had here, you can't just simply negate them to get your answers over here, right? And that's because um, the coefficient of x squared over here isn't 1. So that MCQ trick I talked about in the first example only works if the original question has um, 1 as a coefficient of x squared, right? Or if you can simplify the original equation in such a way that the coefficient of x squared becomes 1, right? That would have worked for you. That is why I said you have to proceed further to try and actually solve the question to see if the answers are actually correct. Okay. All right, so we can move on to the next question. You can pause and try this one as well. So for this question, you can try dividing through by 3, but we can simplify this one as well as this particular fraction as well, right? Remember that this is also over 3, right? I should have actually done that. If you are dividing through by 3, you do so for both sides. Okay, so you can simplify these two fractions, right? So we can't use the simplified version of this equation. We have to use the first one. So again, multiply 3 by 8. That's going to give you 24 factors of. So now our new C becomes -24, and this is because if you multiply this 3, which is positive 3, by this one, which is -8, remember that the negative affects this one as well. So that's going to give us -24, right? So I think it should have been negative, and then a negative sign here as well. So this new -24 is our new C. Okay, so we proceed to find the factors of 24, which have been listed over here. Then we look for two factors of 24, which when we add, we will get -10 here, which when we multiply, we get the new C, which is -24. Okay, so that those two numbers will be -12 and 2. Okay, as we can see, they satisfy the conditions we are looking for. Okay, so we split the negative 10x using those two numbers. So we get this, we group them, factorize further, equate both expressions in the bracket to 0, and then you find your values of x, and you state your final answers. So this is basically how you go about various quadratic equations. So I think that's all for today's video. Thank you for watching, and please do also subscribe for more. I'll see you in my next video. Probably talk about other versions of quadratic equations. Maybe we'll talk about either difference of two squares or a particular type of quadratic equation whereby you can't simply use the factorization method. Okay, so either way, it will still be about quadratic equations. Right, so thank you once again, and I'll see you some other time. Goodbye.